what forgiveness is. It's sort of like, it's a paradox. Without it, you don't get to understand, and with it, it's your benefact, because you now come in with the knowledge to operate your own trust and operate your own land. I mean, this is all, it's sort of like a conditioning, if you will, or, I mean, how does a bodybuilder get stronger except for going each day and tearing those muscles and rebuilding them? So it's all part and parcel. I think it's a perfect plan, and we cannot look at anybody else as fault to anything. It's really a benefit for us to emerge, if you will, as an analogy, at the cocoon, and become stronger in understanding who we are, how do we interact with our fellow man, what forgiveness is, what grace is, what honor is. I mean, those things are all proponents for us to be able to manage our own lands, and as well as to deal equally with our fellow man and build those communities structured on those foundations.
Yeah.
It's true, but don't confuse, like, that's your creed. I could have lands and do some pretty evil stuff on that land once I'm in my reversion state, and there's nothing you can come at and do. Right? So that's not necessarily the motive behind this, but that is necessarily the next step for our future, is that we have to look that way. But that's the whole point of getting to your own lands, is that there is no more group thought. There is no,
you make the rules.
I'm not gonna help my neighbor for our benefit, because down the road, if he has no agreement with me, there is no benefit. He's gone and raped me. He's hoodwinked me. I think that's where we're pulling most of our anger is that we all seem to have a falling away in equity, and that right there is what causes us to start to look into law. Right? This doesn't seem fair, right? And well, it does seem fair once you get to the end of it, because it was truly fair. It was the agreement that you only had. You only had one agreement. That was that warranty for the land that you have a monarchy of other men that are around you protecting. So just by that simple logic, it's a perfect system. There's no complaints. Everything inside the jurisdiction of equity, yeah, it's complainable, but if you're foolish enough to go in it after you're the age of capacity and majority, well, I don't know. That's a whole nother group. We're going to need self-help groups for those.
Well, that's what I meant by being in grace and honor.
Yeah. Absolutely.
How that kind of meant was that, I don't know if I can explain it this way just by talking, but I'll try, because I was looking at it today, but basically, this is coming at it from the name idea. Okay, so the name is basically just your titles and who supposedly you are. Okay, whatever. Now, you were, say, John. There's John Doe, right? So you're just John. That's it. Nothing else. It's like the Bible. You're John from Pasadena, or John from California, whatever. You're just John. Then John had a mother, and the mother signed up for an account for John of the family Doe. He gave him an account in equity. So Justin, you can kick in on this, why he got this account. I don't know why mother ever signed up for that.
You're going wrong. You're giving it a preposition. She never did that on purpose. Right? Where equity can't hear common law. So there is the first injury we all have in common. This is going on behind the scenes in paperwork.
But she did make the application for something.
Yeah, but if you try to go have a child today, they don't let you out of those hospitals without signing that stuff. They don't tell you it's the fair thing to do, and it's ordained by the scripture that's, giving us authority to do all this crooked shit.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. But if they forced her to do that, then she's being divorced right there. She's forced into being a corporate person.
Yeah, but a mother that's pre-planned all this wouldn't be going to the hospital, right? Her family would already have land in their name, so they wouldn't have it in trust with the monarchy. So the whole what if scenario is just kicked out the window when you look at that registration of live birth. Right, that warranty. That's the only thing. So that's a great thing, because if you're we're all villagers, right? We're the villains, okay, from the villagers. Now, from 0 to 7, how can a family within a village protect each other? They can't. They got no army. They got no force. Nothing. So you can kind of see how English law has protect those heathen, the goy. Right? There's your honor coming in, right, David? You're supposed to be honorable. What is the honorable society is? It's like a chain. We are strongest as our weakest link is. Right? We got homeless on the street, yet we're prancing around claiming that we're up in space doing things. Oh, okay, that's smart. Our values are backwards in this society, and it's crumbling down. And as this happens, you're going to see the small corporate entities take over. The law is already written now for it to happen. It's happening, and it's going to clamp down on people that don't understand what's going on. So this process, in my opinion, needs to speed up. Right? As soon as you should already kind of figure out where your land is going to be that you're taking. And if there's somebody in possession of it, you should already kind of know in your head how you're going to be going about that, right? You've got to serve them notices. So that's the biggest deal. How they react with that is where your next step goes, because something amazing might happen. We might actually come across a scenario where the land's given back to us. Then what?
How are you going to communicate?
I have a scenario.
How are you? Go ahead, Easy.
I was going to say, a guy in Bolivia that I know, he just got given some land, but he didn't take it in that particular thing. He knows what I'm talking about and everything, but they just gave him some land, and I wanted to ask him if he asked for that land, and then they gave it to him. That would be different than then just give it to him, right?
Right, because you got to look at who's going to give it, right? What capacity? Where's your seat in law? Right? Did the municipality give you the land? And you're just walking around going, hey, I'm not paying property tax. That's great. Somebody just wrote it off. So it's still exempt, but that void in the municipality isn't there. Right? So it's just exempt. It's kind of like the private and public in equity. And then you got your actual real private, and then your whole equitable jurisdiction that's going on at common law.
But I guess what I was trying to figure out here is that if he had asked those people for his land and they gave it to him, then he still needs proof to show someone else. In other words, he didn't need a deed of release because
No, because you got to look at their capacity in law. What's their seat in law? If it was a municipality like the mayor who gives them the land, he doesn't have the authority to give any land. He can exempt land inside the jurisdiction, so that's all that would be happening. That's what happened to Anna Van Reed. Is she's exempted, but she's not exempt in the common law that like we're going for with reversion, which it'll create a whole void. So when you do a land title search, it's private. Like you don't get any information. This is why we have land trust companies protecting these donors that are in reversion.
Yeah, Miss C here that's on the call, she's looked at some maps and she's seen different types of land and how it's marked out. And some of these private lands, whether they're from long time ago or whatever, they have a different color coding than other lands around them. And it's basically just because of their the way they're held, which could still be equity.
They wouldn't remain in it. Like if the donor dies, that it would be escheated if they don't have anybody to give it off to, the heirs.
Yeah.
So it won't just remain in some type of limbo. Somebody has to be in possession of the land. So even if there is no physical man on that land in possession, the state is in possession. Right? That's why you have your actual environment and parks ministry for each province and state around, is because that's what they're taking care of. Nobody's responsible enough to stand up and go, hey, I'm a mature soul. I'll take care of the land. I'll subdue it, like the first page of the scripture says. That's what's sad, is that if you look at scripture, we don't get past the first page. God says we don't live past a day. There seems to be this common theme that we can't get past this first step of what this whole life here is about until you learn reversion, and then you realize, wow, that baby step of, that 0 to 7 when we were supposed to be playing, and then learning to be responsible from 7 onward is where we should have took the first step that God keeps talking about. Right? So it's kind of neat to see how it's magnified itself, but it's just still one step. We've got such a...
It's hard to get your mind around the fact that a 7-year-old would go in and claim land.
But see, this is just it, is that upon being 7, I can be an Amanus Curry and go in and represent and be there, but not in the equitable jurisdiction. So I'll be a friend to the court and help a 7-year-old through that. And a 7-year-old could then have that, right?
Right.
Obviously, a 7-year-old from equity, I would never in my mind even think about doing that, but it could happen.
But would that mean basically that when your 7-year-old becomes vested, how does he relate then to you? I mean, you're still obviously his father, but he's his own landowner?
Well, yeah, biologically, like he did be father, but in law, he's become his own man, his own king.
Yeah.
Right. We say 7 because 7 is usually the age that you see the Jewish creed teaching their people from 7 to 13. So at 13, the bar mitzvah hits and they become the child of law, which if you look at law, they'd be going into reversion right there.
And that makes sense because they hit puberty at 13. So basically,
and you have your sweetheart and you have your children. You can relate to the children because you're still in your childhood. And then as you're maturing and going out, you can see how you just keep passing the buck. It's supposed to be like nature, right? Nature doesn't hold on to vitality. It passes it off to each generation.
Yep.
But we are on another course. We're going to try to mix with machine and keep on vitality. And good luck.
I know I always look at it like that same example as the hermit shell crab. If you're by the ocean, these shells, they're all over the ocean. And then when one crab gets in it, he uses it until he's too big or whatever. And then he bails on that shell and another person is able just to move into it. It's like it's natural.
In relation to property, how are you going about locating or finding property? Is that any property that may be in the hands of a bank or a corporation that may be somewhat dissolved, or
freehold land and crown land?
Any land within fee simple.
Yeah, it's not property; it's land.
Yeah, land. Sorry, yes, using the right terminology. Properties in advance, but of course you don't want to go after someone who's on that property who's in fee simple for the fact that you're sort of creating a rift or creating.
No, that's not true. Buyer beware. That man or woman or couple or whoever bought that property in fee simple should have been aware that they bought it in fee simple, knowing that it's in abeyance. That at any time that somebody as a donor wants to make a claim, that they have to put it into reversion and it has to go back to the donor. So if you're foolish enough to buy something in fee simple, that's your bad.
Right. But what I'm trying to say is that, being somewhat compassionate to other human beings and their own ignorance is that it probably, I would say for my own self-interest, I would look for property that banks have got or foreclosed on. That would be.
I would recommend if you're in Canada, David, I'd go for Crown.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going for. I'm going for crown first. And as soon as I have my crown, I'm expanding from my little 2-kilometer square to my 640-kilometer squared section that I believe has been given to me. And that has people on it. That has 75 separate notices, 75 separate cases I'll have to do way down the future. But that's for my 1,000 generations of my family that I'm focusing on. So that might change, right? Because I might get into reversion and, right, I'm on the other side of the fence and the grass is green. And I might go, let's just move a little bit closer into those mountain ranges. Let's not be on the side of the prairie. Let's just go, 3 or 4 mountain ranges deep into the mountains. And then I'll take a 640 square acre. Right? I don't know if that'll happen. That is very real possibility. But right now, from what I've seen, that's my game plan. Just a little small 2-kilometer inhabited by man in any jurisdiction. The state has it. The state has it protected now as a provincial park. So it's going to be interesting to see a nice little square, 2-kilometer square section of the new provincial park just, go into a voided area.
Is it on the Alberta side or the the BC side?
Yeah, Alberta it's on Alberta. Yeah, right by Beaver Mines. So that once I have that land, I'll have an area that we can have the deforestment camp. Is kind of what the plan is I'm going at. So we'll have an actual location here in Alberta that we can have people being deforest without having to worry about any of the crap that equity will bring to them. So that will include you'll be able to move some of your goods on there, and we'll have it in trust, protect. Because we all know not everybody's going to be able to part with everything that they have. Some people are going to want to continue to bring that stuff into the new world, which is fair. I get that. That's redemption. But there has to be a proper way, recognized way in law, or else you handicap yourself in it. You basically disbar yourself from, or you bar yourself from your inheritance, your land. Right? Because if anybody that was incompetent could just come and claim land, well, it'd be far worse than what we're at right now, because it needs to be a group of many, many people that are incompetent to do what they're doing right now. If they could just allow one guy to do that, well, you might as well just look at the third world across on the other side there. I'm sure it's quite similar.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure is what's, they're planning that, right? Because it's profitable. If you could get into a smaller jurisdiction, every time you half the jurisdiction, the profits increase by 4. It's the inverse square law. They're actually working that with Mammon. So the law of perception is working in the same financial system that we utilize today. So every time they half the jurisdiction, it creates 4 times the profit. So you can see how this system will never end. As long as they can keep creating a jurisdiction within a jurisdiction, the profit will increase by 4. It's an exponential profit system.
Yeah, that's the reverse. Like a dollar bill is really the highest amount, and I'm in America, obviously, but the dollar bill is the highest amount of money you can have. $100 is 1/100th of $1, $100 bill, because it's a debt system.
Right.
So that's what he says. Every time you split it in half, it's like you got 2 50 cents. Well, now each person who owns the 50 cents has to pay tax and stuff like that.
It's the beast system. It's inequity, right? It's partialism. It's person. It's capacities, right? This is the thing that we all share, is we all share the same capacity. The ones that don't share the same capacity as everyone else, they're very much singled out. You put them in a school system and in calculation system, and you'll see how we point out those people that have flaws. Blind people, deaf people, look how they've been attacked. We had to create own languages and systems for them so that they can interact with the rest of us. That's a little screwed up. It's like pointing to the bad member of your family, right, and treating them special because they're bad. Well, I hate to say it, but that everybody's probably like, well, that's kind of like how we all do it. Well, yeah, but that's not how it should be done. Look at scripture when it's talking about when your child that is not correctable. You take it out to the side of the town and you stone it to death. You get rid of those genes that aren't correctable. But we don't do that today. And now you can kind of see how the system that they had for land is really good. Because if we're in some type of system such as the Shira law, women wouldn't have land. Women are barred from land. There's no way that they can have land. They can't even drive vehicles. And Canada is about to accept that. So that equitable jurisdiction will not be friendly for women, any color of skin. And they're arguing about color of skin and all this crazy nonsense. Protesting. Right? What are you protesting?
You know, it's funny. I was just studying. I had studied it a while ago, but I went over it because I was actually talking to Anna, just chatting with her about some things and stuff. And basically, she doesn't chat. She answers back, and I answer back and stuff like that for a while. But anyway, she was explaining how her, the same thing she does, that everything she's doing is right and blah blah blah. And I don't really argue with her. But what I was explaining to her was the fact that in the Muslim culture, basically you can think of that as one gigantic system, equity system. And when you don't go along with it, they have these different ways of dealing with it. And one of them is called the Yizak. There's the Zakat and the Yizak. And they're taxes, basically. So if you're in the Yizak system, I don't know if I'm saying that exactly right, but if you're in the Yizak system, then you're one of the Christians who live in a Muslim area that's getting taken over. And you could still live in that if you want to pay that Yizak tax. And they make you wear all white so you can set out in front of them. And then you got to pay the tax. As long as you pay the tax, then they'll protect you. Call it a protection tax. So just like, police and all that, we're paying taxes for that protection. But then the regular people who live there, they have to pay the zakat, which is a tax on Muslims. And that tax on Muslims is for the government, to function and everything. And everyone has to pay that kind of tax. But it's funny when you start to understand and study that little bit of system. I can put some links, but when you see that, it's everything that the world is. And it's what's coming. But it's more as a more, enforced way of doing it. Like right now, it's all enforced. Like we do the same things, but they're just not as, seemingly as enforced. But they are, because if you don't pay the tax, you're going to lose your house and stuff like that. But you're not going to get stoned, I guess. That's what I mean, like over there. But anyway.
That's not true. We will put you in a prison cell, and the prisoners will do much worse to you than what a rock can do.
That's probably true, yeah. But this is the part.
We deserve this, though. Do you see how it's not sinister, though?
You mean not sinister to stone someone?
Right. See, this is what's going to get people about this whole system of God, and especially what the Torah is. When you really start reading the Hebrew, it's like there's a reason why they call Yahushua, Jesus, Joshua in that chapter of Joshua, and they don't flat out say Jesus. Right? And the other characters that do killing, they don't call him Jesus. But it's all the same character, because it's all capacities. The whole book is about one individual. It's a capacity book. So it'll walk you through how you capacitate yourself in operations of law. Right? Whether or not you're going to run through the wall, through the doorway, or if you're going to hit the wall because it's law. It's all about words, jurisdictions, right? What capacity you're in, right? So it ties back to that Jubilee. What I think is going to happen is that we are in the next Jubilee. We've got 49 years left. It's in sync with William the Conqueror's 1,000-year reign that we have of Scripture. So we're not going to see the really, really insane, like, futuristic bad shit until the 50-year mark is up. But we're going to see the transitioning of that now. So most of the people alive today will die.
So it's either you're right or you're wrong. In other words, either it's still coming or it's going to come in 49 years, just depending how the time is most likely.
Oh, it's coming, and you can proof it through the law, because what they do with the law, first they take, it's just like William the Conqueror, right? He took the throne in 1066. So that's your birth, right? And then you see it become official in 1086 with the Doomsday Book, the Liber de Wintonia, your book of death. So either you're written in there as chattel for the municipal corporations, which are all just demons. They're dead entities. Demon in Hebrew is pointing to shade, because it's shud, desolation. What do you think the desolation is of? Land. So if you create desolation to your land, which is anything in fee simple, you can kind of see how Scripture is pointing to this generation right now.
Yeah.
So you're going to have a few of us stand up, but there's going to be a mass cloaked in white, and they die and they get reborn type of deal. So I can only imagine what those types of people have in store for their future. I know I don't want to be one of those. I'd rather go to that Abraham capacity, where he just believed in God, and then he was given righteousness. He was fronted righteousness and awarded for it. So obviously he was tested with, his son Isaac. But if you read the other books that, King James takes away from you, you'll realize that animal that Isaac was replaced with, so Abraham didn't kill Isaac, he killed the animal. That animal was created before everything else. But yet most Christians, through Christendom, are told the story where God's creating animals post creation of the world. Whereas when you read the original words, that's not what's being spoken at all. That nobody understands because of transliteration, which is happening now with English law. That's where you have all these law gurus teaching common law with equity and equity with common law. Well, prior to last year, you could do that. Now it sounds like you're going to be thrown into the insane silo. They're not playing anymore.
For me, the Genesis and the story of God creating the universe is actually telling the story of the spirit of consciousness. So you yourself, because science, it's backed up with science and the flower of life. So at first, the spirit of consciousness is basically nothing. All it's aware of is itself and its own limitation. Like when you put your arms out and as far as you can reach, well, that's what you know. Then the natural thing that it does is move to its nearest point. It moves to the nearest point and then does the same again. The spirit of consciousness evaluates its perimeter of what it can see, and then that first movement creates a crossover of those two circles of awareness, if you will. In between those two crossovers is where light is created, and that's how it describes it in on the second day. Let there be light or something. At first,
I get what you're doing,
and then there was light.
Yeah, you can apply sacred geometry to the days of creation. But it goes much further, because we're not told that God's standing with somebody until much later into the books, right? He's standing with wisdom, and then he speaks one word, right? Bereshit bara et. He says et. He spoke it. And he was standing next to wisdom. And wisdom fractured herself when she carnated here and became wisdom and understanding. And I would say, I'd just go as far as to say is that she's here again. She's back again. But that's a whole different story, and that's why we see this. What I can explain why equity is crumbling and it's changing, and why it's doing what it's doing. What Sebastian Legapspi, that Queen of the South, is doing, every time she makes a movement, they have to react to it. This is why the Vatican issued what they did with the apostolic letter. This is why they lost their power and they didn't say anything. They've written laws, everything. Everything's tied to what's going on because B and B are fighting. Which when we look at us, it's a good thing and a bad thing, I guess, that there's a new B. Right? It's good that, she's benevolent, but it's bad that she's here fighting with the old B because we consent to be governed by that old B through that land tenure, which most of us don't even know about. We're not even in possession of a copy of. So to me, I see that that's big time spooky because if the leaders of equity right now decide to act on her and go, hey, we're going to punish the people that are basically what are considered the heathen, the goyim of scripture, right, who have their feet in two jurisdictions. They act morally, but then they don't act morally in law. Right? So there's two separate things standing, a creature, a son of perdition, a man of sin, and the actual soul that's behind it. So if they go and punish that one, they're going to come to everybody and basically charge them for the Jubilee, which if you look at scripture, that's exactly what they say. They catch you and then they charge you for that year. But the Jubilee year, which is a 50-year period to us.
Yeah, I think it still links in with, I think the sacred geometry plays its part because I'm not sure whether that is what they deemed as God or the creator back then, but obviously the religions have all been hijacked by English law and they've almost mirrored it again, if you will.
But religion is a single operation of law, and people extend it far beyond it, and they think when they go to church and they have some type of spiritual connection with a creed, that's religion. Religion is just an operation of realigning your sovereign.
Yeah, that's all religion means, is the alignment.
It's one step.
Obviously, you're coming from the point of view as there is religion that means something different than what they're doing.
Religion, belief, and faith are all directly connected, and they're not separate. So when you here in Canada try to say, hey, I got a freedom of faith and you guys got to accommodate my faith, they'll lock you up and put you in jail.
Yeah, so what's your faith?
See, that's funny because I don't really have a faith because I'm not operating in any law right now. So let me explain the words. This is what jurisdiction capacity is about because I'm not in the same jurisdiction as most and I'm not operating in the same capacity. Mm-hmm. Belief to me is what is the root to the system, okay? So that stem is your faith, okay? So the belief can be anything. Belief is your conviction, right? You can have a spaghetti monster as your God. And God is just a word for power. So they're all kind of laughing like a schoolgirl going, when people are going, well, this is my God. Christ is my God.
What's yours?
I don't have a God. I go by the God that the Hebrews do, Yahuwah. But
so is that your God?
My power is the same power that if you put your hand to your chest. In Hebrew, there's a word for covenant, and it's called brith, as in breathe. So everybody can hold their hand.
What I'm getting at is the fact of, we're saying, the KJV Bible, for example, was hijacked by English law or was used as a whatever you want to kind of label it as, we'll call it that. But ultimately, it's not the truth of what was or what was prior to English law and what the true truth is. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, if you yourself, if you must be following something, you're just obviously trying to be careful of your words, which I understand, but ultimately you still follow some form of religion or
I could
God,
say it simply.
And is that man-made or what?
My God is my Lord God, and I know exactly what that means. But if you're only reading King James Bible, you're not going to understand that. Right? Because in Psalm 68:4, it says that all three of those capacities have a name, and it's Yah. right? So the tetragrammaton, which is just a Greek portmanteau word, which is just simply saying 4-letter word, which would be your YHWH in English, but it was your Yod He Vav He in Ibri, in Hebrew, right? Which is just an extension of Yah, which is just a compression of Yahuwah, the tetragrammaton. So
Yeah,
I believe in the Torah. What the Torah describes, from what I've read from it, I can't disprove what the Torah has been teaching me, and it's taught me.
The Torah is basically the same, isn't it? The Torah, the Tanakh, they're almost like
The
a
Tanakh,
law book.
well, they're just laws written by man.
The
Which
Torah is just
some
the
of
first
them are
4 books,
ordained by the law of God, right? So the Torah is just what Moses presented to the Jews, but again, that's transliterated English, which is telling a different story. So then your memory is probably pulling off something than what I'm actually trying in Hebrew, because that's what it's actually physically saying. But Hebrew, which when I say it in the tongue of Hebrew is Ibri, that language is not like English. It's very similar to how our English chemical language is. So like H2O, you can break that down and know what it's made out of, the chemical water, by H2O. Hebrew is the same way. So each letter you can break down linguistically, and etymology even itself is the study of et, which is the original word that was spoken. So it's all coming from this Hebrew language, which they just hijacked. And then in 1611, King James, he just made it into official Old English. Right, and it's written in paralabs. So that's the key. So once you understand that it's written in Old English riddles, you can start deciphering it and finding out what it really means, which it explains English law. It explains the capacities if you're void of English law, or if you catch out yourself in English law, and all through it. Like, to me, it's beyond what man could wrote. Like, there's no way man wrote it, but there's no way there was a man behind that figuring out, how do I write this? And you can see by the great works of man, they don't come anywhere close to what the original Hebrew words, like how it is made. It's just boom. Like the Egyptians, everybody thinks Egyptians spoke Egyptian. No, they didn't. They spoke Hebrew. They had emoticons, which were hieroglyphs, and people confuse that with the language that they think Hebrew spoke, but I can show you that's surely not the case. Et is the proof. It's in every language. They didn't change it because they don't understand it.
Between the Egyptians, sacred geometry, and whatever they knew at that time. You know, when you go into, you know, the Atlantis and the Mayans and the Nacals, and you're talking about different dimensions and such, created through sacred geometry or the knowledge of.
If you're void of magnetism, the knowledge of magnetism, and you're going to start touching on sacred geometry, I really start experiencing cognitive dissonance, just so you know. You need to understand magnetism and understand sacred geometry, let alone just geometry. As soon as you understand that, you'll know why Tesla kept saying 369 is the secret. You'll see it. I'll tell you the hint. It's the 90-degree angle, but people think it's something far grand.
But that 90-degree angle is still going to coincide with the sacred geometry.
It coincides with everything, right? Common law is what angle from equity? 90
I'd
degrees.
say 180.
No. It's 90 degrees. It couldn't be 180s because that would be going against the use.
No, just right? A mirror of.
Right, but they're like quarter mirrors. Right, so you're truly only getting a 45-degree angle away from the truth with the 90-degree mirror that they're placing there. That's why they do things in increments of 50, and then every 100 years, you see it actually manifest. Because they're just slowly changing the face of the mirror. And if you study that Bible and how they're changing the words, the first word I came across, which most people do, was that word person. Right? But to me, person is a portmanteau word. And that's how I explain it. It's done right there. You don't know what a portmanteau word is? Go search it. You'll understand that's what they've been using to usurp the word of God.
What, Justinian law?
Well, not only just Justinian law. Justinian, all these laws, all these codes, if you look about it, it's just the consent to be governed. It's demon crazy. Democracy.
Man trying to rule.
Right. And the Hebrew word for desolation is shud. Right? So if you are somebody that performs desolation, you're then be called shade. Okay, so this is where, you know, your business dealings are really shady. That's where that comes from. It's a Hebrew. It's stemming from Hebrew. It's a parable on Hebrew. Now, the transliteration for a shade is demon. Like, you know, the little red horn guys in Hollywood show you in the movies? Those demons. Right? So now if you look at...
We are the demons.
Right. And demons are only just somebody who creates desolation against their inheritance, their land. Right. A citizen. A villain. Right? See, in Old English law, they were very, very truthful. They didn't lie to them because nobody knew Old English law. Then people caught on to it and they had to modify it into modern English law. Right? And that's
reasoning. When they carefully chose what words to change the meaning of when they were creating that jurisdiction.
Right. We've already gone past the awareness point again, right? Because we already are in corporate municipal law that's going to come again. To us is going to be terrifying, but to the people that don't expect it, think of the scenario that would plop you in it. I don't know. A forest fire burning your house, and then you come back seeing your house is gone and you want to rebuild. You got everything to do that, but they're telling you, no, you can't rebuild here now. Oh,
that happened in California, didn't it?
It's not just happening there, my friend. It's happening everywhere. That is the new system. A temporary domicile. You no longer are domiciled. You're exactly like those circus animals. They don't got a domicile. They just travel. Right, go here, go there. Right, you got to have digital money in order to buy food. Right, you don't need a thing in your arm. That is the mark of the beast. It is the system. It's the ideology. Right, if you're in reversion and you got your millions now, it's just like what somebody asked William there the other day, and William responded beautifully. You invest in things that are going to make you self-efficient. So you can self-govern not only yourself, but the generations below you.
You don't rely on their system in order to get what you need to survive.
Equity makes fun of it by calling it bugging out. Right? You only have to look at equity. What do they mock and what do they make now a new disorder? Whatever they're trying to... In the natural world, the natural realm, right? Because natural law overrides everything. You might be exempt from municipal fees, but if you don't have your confirmation, you're released from the Queen's Bench, that Lord Chancellor, the guy who is the one in Matthew 18 where it says that you got to go to. So whereas everybody's making these mistakes and going to the actual man in private playing the capacities, they're going to the wrong man.
Yeah.
Because there's only one man.
This is
not going to accept blame for nothing except for you going in there and going, hey, this was my heir. I want to vest my land, my release here, blah, 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 blah.
This is a conversation I had with Chris. We had a couple of hours chat the other day. How it's quite hard to find the ultimate, the bottom line, the guy who is the seal holder, because they've delegated their authority here, there and everywhere,
No, it's very simple. It's your Queen's Bench justice.
But where's the appointed government member that I'd hand my release?
You don't appoint anybody. You give it to. Okay. See, I noticed this confusion here, and I wasn't sure if that actually was what was manifesting. But I see it is. Okay, you got to understand who's privy to this. Who's privy to the land tenure?
But if the monarchy delegated that authority, would they not? But they didn't
delegate the authority past the Queen's Bench.
It was just the use of.
Right, but who cares about a use?
But
you can worry about the use when you're
that use of though as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. So who do you think you release it to? Wouldn't you release it to the guy that's holding the land tenure?
Or who process? They got it from?
Right, he represents not only the British monarchy, but who's paying him? Your state is.
Yeah, so
he's the one individual. So if you're going to release yourself out of a corporate ID and say you get arrested, you think you got the chance to go send off registered mail to your local head of the state and whoever's holding on to your lands? Absolutely not. You're going to have to think the game a little bit stronger, right? So that means there should only be one guy that you're going to be releasing to. How did you pay to get into that Queen's Bench? Damn. I gave it away there. How'd you get into the Queen's Bench?
So
you paid, didn't you? Right? So in other words, that's purchase. So by default, the operational law to me is showing that your seat in law right from the get-go is D. You entered Queen's Bench as D. Here you go. There's my release. I'm not D. Oh, I'm already in here. I gave the consideration. Here's the laws you have to follow. So let's get this over with because I'm competent and I'm surely now past the age of majority. And, well, it looks like I just hit the age of, not consent, but of capacity, right? Because that is unlimited. Some people don't even hit that age of capacity.
Mm.
And that's the kicker. Right? You could be 7 years old and have firsthand knowledge of all this. And if you comprehend it, boom, your age of capacity. You can go in, get her done. We're overthinking this, right? So your release is going to your Queen's Bench justice. If you have opportunity to do it beforehand, you go and take it to your local state holder. So, like in Canada, the provincial lieutenant governor. I'm not sure how it is in the state, but
are you saying
your individual state holder.
Any of the other parties, like the tenant or the grantor or anything, until you submit your claim and your notices are in that claim?
Like mine's all going to happen either tomorrow or the next day. We're going to be giving it to the lieutenant governor, and then the body that's holding the lands is the same body. It's the Alberta government. So I'm going to issue it to the specific agency that actually takes care of the land, and that's Alberta Environment and Parks. So I'll have 2 notices that go out to them, and that's for the notice of claim. Right, because my release isn't privy to them. Right, she's just a seal holder for Canada, and they're in possession of my land. So my release will be going to the Queen's Bench. Right, so when I go into the Queen's Bench to make my application, that's where the release is.
I'm a little confused.
So when you make that application, you're
because I anticipate they're not going to release my lands to me in reversion. They're going to hold on to it.
Injury.
Yes, I have to create the injury because if I don't have a cause of action, I can't get in there.
So even going to the Queen's Bench to get that writ of release, you've got to have an injury first.
Right, but we can go after the injury that equity cannot hear common law. That's an injury we all have in common, and that's kind of the hint that we can do this kind of afterwards. Once we get into donor, we can go and help all the children out of this whole mess. We can right the wrongs because that's the injury everybody has in common. equity cannot hear common law. So once we do become accepting of the land tenure and the deed polls that manifest out of it, which is usually your SIN card, right? Or, well, actually now they're giving SIN cards and Alberta health cards to children that are born from the hospital. So they get that just shortly after the birth certificate. So right away they're getting deed polls. So they accept it right off the bat. So obviously, not only does equity cannot hear common law, creating that injury, but they're giving stuff to minors that are incompetent, right? Because 3 until 7, you really lack the mental capacity to even absorb anything, right? And if you look at equity, they don't allow that 12-year-old mark is their minor mark. But we're going to need a group at least 12. That's what William was talking about. If we get 12 people, we can start really changing the world. Right now, we got to focus only on our lands. Right. So I've already made a half-assed release, which I did last year. Or wait, we're in 2000. Yeah, I think it was last year. I don't know. I have to look at my paperwork. It was back in one of the Mays, either last year or the year before. And it wasn't the right way, and I sent it to the wrong guy, right? So that's where you need to know where your release is. Is it recognizable? Did it go to somebody that has the authority, right? Because if not, then you're not following the law. And if you look at the law, you're going to see that there is only really one guy that's the ideal candidate to get this done. Because think of it this way: if you're going to release your corporate rights,
are you talking about the Lord High Chancellor?
Right, guy that's sitting in the Queen's Bench.
Chancellor also means canceller, if you think about it.
Right, and what do you think they do when you put your warranty back? Right, cancel out your contract, your agreement that you have standing with other men. Because there's only one agreement that we have, and it's in common law, and we didn't agree to it because we didn't elect a monarchy. We didn't give consent. Nobody signed it. We weren't even of age, let alone of capacity. Right? So that's kind of where you have to look at it, is you accepted this. Your mom and dad didn't tell you, so there's the strike, right? You can't, that's how you acknowledge it, that you're in trouble, right? Mom and dad didn't tell me, so you can't blame them. Government didn't tell me. Well, it's not their responsibility, right? Your mom and dad should have had land in their own name, and then you wouldn't be here.
And you should have asked why you didn't have it, if you didn't.
Right. So now if you're sending your corporate release to the wrong party, what does that say now about your competence?
He's still not ready. Still not understanding.
Right.
The full.
Because you got to justify what you do, and everything you got to do, you got to basically think in a summary manner, so that you can put everything into summary fashion and get a summary judgment after your notices of or your notice to omit have reached their time limits, which are different in each jurisdiction. I don't know what they are for everybody's jurisdiction. So. But mine, by the end of February, I should be able to go in and put a motion for summary judgment against the Alberta government and finally get my motion or my land vested. There's a lot of time that you got to wait for notices now, right? That's why, my application to the Queen's Bench doesn't happen until the day after the tacit agreement time elapses, that Alberta government doesn't release my lands due to my claim of reversion or interest in reversion. So I know they're not going to do that, because Alberta and BC were one of the two provinces that got behind this Freeman on the land litigation. So I know they're not going to do it. Plus, I don't have my release. If I had my release and I went and sent that paperwork, they would give it no problem. But I don't have that release, right? So I'm creating another injury so that I can claim that I'm divorced at that point too, like William, right? Being divorced and then having that common injury where equity cannot hear common law is giving me ample cause of action. I give my consideration, which is the $250 application fee for the claim in Queen's Bench, right? And then I just have to pay for the motions that I'll have to go through in order to get it. And if the Crown puts anything against me, I have to pay for the motions to squash all that crap. Because we have a system of conveyancing law from 1861, which allows us under, I think, section 1272. Yeah, 1272 to 1274 in there is going to tell us that the parties that are executing this are estoppeled from disputing it. The indenture, which is your registration of live birth, that's the warranty for the land. So when you are re-emitting that after your release of your rights, duties, and actions to your corporate body, they, by law, by 6 and chapter 18, they're gonna, by law, give it back. Do you guys see how simple it is?
Yeah,
it's very simple. It's not hard. It's
for
everybody's
me
thinking it's hard because we have to now redefine everything. You were taught wrong, so just accept it. Taught wrong. Here's the right way.
Yeah,
and it's very simple.
Yeah, you're right. I think as soon as I've completed all my paperwork and I'm comfortable with the setup of who I'm sending it to, what the process is going to be after that, and what replies I might get, etc. As soon as I've done a few moot court cases, I'm happy to go as well.
Justin, my deal when we have the case or whatever, I realized that I wasn't divorced yet. I still have a seal. So that's kind of interesting. I don't know how that's going to play. Any idea?
Well, in order to be divorced, yeah, you want to give up that release. So that's maybe why you guys were getting confused when I was saying just go to Queen's Bench, right? I don't have a camper, and I surely don't have money to get a camper, right? And neither does my spouse, Angela. She's just not in a condition where that's possible. So I've got to go at this straight to the beast. I got to go into the Sinaj Satan, and I got to do what I got to do, right? We're all going to be different. Right? So my template doesn't work for everybody. I've got 6 kids, right? And I don't have the scenario where I can be divorced, right? But I'm not in possession of anything equitable. I'm not tied to Angela at all, other than I just received my last check from equity, I guess you would call it, which went to her place. But that's going to fund my Queen's Bench claim. So it's kind of like if they're going to go after me and that's kind of silly.
So where is it said that you have to be divorced? Because it seems, that's you have to be injured, really, is what they're saying, instead of being divorced, right?
Well, being divorced proves the injury.
Yeah, proves the injury.
Because it's like, well, yeah, like William really covered his base by what he's talking about with camp divorcement. That's the best. Like, if you can get into that, I highly recommend that. If you can have a trailer or a mobile camper, whatever you guys call it over there in UK, US, get into that and just go camping while you're doing it. Because if you don't, then you do run the risk of you're going to have to prove and justify everything you're doing. Right? I have 6 kids tied with another man or woman in law, but man in law. So they're obviously going to look at that and they're going to see that. Right? So there's always things that are going to look at you in the negative light, but that's where you take your positive facts and separate them from your negative facts, because a negative fact you can't use in law. Right? Just like William, what he was saying, like they're gonna charge him with not having paid his stuff or whatever it be, but it has no force or effect on you. There's no agreement, right? So it's really it all acts on you, on whether or not you're going to be slothful through this process. So I could send off my release to Lois, then wait, then send it off to Alberta government about my lands being claimed, then wait. I don't know, then a couple of weeks later, then go make a Queen's bench. You know, wait a couple of weeks, make some notices for that app or that claim, and send it off to the parties that are part of it.
To admit,
right? I could do everything really slow and make mistakes, and they can find reasons, but I don't have that opportunity no more. It's too late for me. Right? I didn't learn law when I was 7 to 12. My parents were working, as I think everybody's parents end up doing. So this is the scenario it is. So I'm just going to release Queen's Bench, because when I released it to David Johnson, he didn't respond. And when I had talked to them the first time, they didn't really know what I was doing or who I was. And they answered some questions. I think the woman that was talking to me, she got moved around because she's no longer was allowed to talk to me right after, about a week after it. So they knew kind of what I was doing. And when I fought in family court, I was using my registration of live birth as my identity. So I wasn't using equity in equity court. So when I left that court, I had like 6 cops chase me. I didn't even see them. I was actually called and told by my family that, you know, you have cops following you, and I'm just saying, whatever. But it's going to be much different now. Like, I've got somebody who's right now in custody, and they put him in the psychology ward, and they're holding him there. So I'm not sure what he said to the RCMP and what's all going on. But if you be slothful, I can't help people. And it's kind of, I've heard the saying that you can't, you got to carry your own cross, right? So I think this is really applicable for all of us in this group. Even if one of us goes down, it's kind of your own folly that you've gone down, right? This isn't a group to pull each other out of jail. So if you've gone to jail, you don't have clean hands, you've done something wrong. You kind of got to be a man and stand up and own whatever you did wrong, correct it, so that when you go to get your land, they're not holding that against you and barring you. Because really, until one of us goes in and gets this successfully done, we're not going to know for sure how this works out. This is why William's in a good position. Whereas, and if it doesn't work out, he can go to jail, but his family's not being punished, his partner is not being punished. She would still obviously have their possessions and be able to go and start anew. But imagine being in, like, say you got your own house that you've paid for, right? Or maybe you've done a mortgage on it or something silly, and right, your kids are living with you, and you go and start putting this in. Well, let's look at Meads in Alberta, okay? He tried pulling that stuff in divorce court, and he gave the world the OPCA litigation indirectly. So Alberta's smart here with their equitable judges. They're not going to just hand over land to anybody. We've got to go about this really smart and by the law.
Quite interesting, if I could come in here about that case. It's Nigel from United Kingdom. I studied that quite a lot when it first came out, that judgment. It ran to quite a few pages, didn't it? And it just shows how the system is trying to throw us all off the scent to a degree. I mean, why would they go to so much? Why would a judge go to so much trouble to write, what was it, 136 pages?
Well, it's very actually simple, Nigel, is that prior to the Meads versus Meads case, they had no real litigation to get rid of people who were bringing common law into equity.
Yeah.
They could just go, I can't hear this, I dismiss this, adjourn. And you've seen the videos, I'm sure, online where, you know, people are like, yeah, I won, the judge walks out, I'm running the court. No, because you're forgetting the simple logic of agreements. Yeah. Where's the agreement that you run the court or even have authority to be in the court?
Yeah.
Right? We let that ego, and I love taking words and putting them in the mirror and seeing the other side of what the word says. Like ego says, oh gee, backwards. So if you can say that on any of those actions that you see, kind of like, oh man, that's ego right there. He's fallen. He's got that Ephesians 2:3 to go after, right? Is man of sin and son of perdition is going to be exposed. And that's what exactly happens is we hit that falling away. And to me, Meads versus Meads, the OPCA litigation wasn't really good. I had the same opinion. It was kind of like, this is stupid. But now I could tell you it's probably one of the best litigations that we have in equity to protect the land and the donor. Imagine if Meads or any of these guys got what they wanted.
Create one hell of a precedence, wouldn't it? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Right? There's no restriction and we'd have people running amiss. At least we have an agreement that we all agreed upon. It's all rectified, or none of it's rectified. Or it is rectified, sorry, by our acceptance, whether that's through arrogance or not, but it's all in law and it's all written. So by our ignorance, we can turn that around and go, oh man, that's our folly, that's our error. Okay, so what does the law say? Okay, so 6N says this, okay, a conveyancing of system of property, it says this, okay, oh, this is what, wow, this is simple. Why are people saying this is bad? Right? That's where I've gotten. I experience cognitive dissonance. I don't understand no more why people say it's bad. Because it has such great benefit. How do you protect the land 0 to 7 for the heathen? You have to have somebody stand up and protect it all. And that's exactly what happened. The monarchy did that. Right, which then brings the subtle fact, we didn't elect it. I didn't vote the monarchy to protect my land, but did rectify it. So I rectified that agreement when I accepted the deed polls that started coming out of it. Right, so you just release. You say no to that stuff. I release the rights, the actions, and the duties. So as soon as you let go of that trustee capacity, now you got to start moving properly. So that's why I'm going to do it all at the Queen's Bench, right? I'm not going to take any side steps. We're going straight there. Let's get this done. If I stumble, I'm going to stumble inside the Queen's Bench. So I don't want to stumble anywhere else because that guy's the only guy that, in my opinion, through law, is the guy that I should be talking to. Right, a seal holder of the province. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead. In relationship to coming up with a fee in order to pay for the right to put that motion into the Queen's Bench. Are you thinking at all that it's a matter of what kind of currency you use? I mean, can you at that point request that it's lawful as opposed to the fiat currency, or does it have to be fiat in order to establish your capacity at that point, what you're trying to remove? I'm not sure if I understand your question fully. I think it can be answered with where are you in law? What's your seat in law will answer the currency that you must use.
But you're going in there trying to be under the common law is what you want
you're not.
To establish.
Do you have a land tenure?
No.
Then you're not. Then you don't have a land tenure. So you've
so
got
then
a
you're using fiat
release.
then.
Yeah, if you don't.
So you're using the fiat.
Well, what else would you think you'd be using? What would you pay to go into Queen's Bench? What do you think?
Well, I know others. Well, I know others that, and again, this is getting to the private court, private side through equity. There's a bunch of guys who are doing that, where they're establishing that they're paying with lawful currency or within money, or being the U.S. is backed by gold, but they're using lawful money, and the cost is about 1/3, if not 1/4 less than what it would have been for fiat.
Okay, let me speak on that because you don't want to start using that treasury.
Yeah.
Man, it's like we dug a gigantic pit and put this little metal box that projects a hologram of land so that you don't see the pit. And then everybody runs to that pit because it says free money in this box, and it points down. And everybody runs there. Okay? The Treasury is a corporation. So if you're accessing the corporation, you're subject to the corporation. And that's what they're letting everybody do, because that Queen of the South is taking the land tenure away from the United States, from the Vatican specifically. So they don't have their title to do equity no more. But equity still exists and is very lawful still and legal, because we have democracy, the consent to be governed. We have people that are consenting to this. So as that system is collapsing and we're seeing the mutation and the evolution of municipal law now begin, you're allowing all these old systems of finance to just do whatever they do. Like, it doesn't matter. The people that started it are going to walk away. But the people that are, attached to it, underneath those guys, they are the ones that pay. That's where it ties back to the Jubilee. So if you're caught doing that kind of stuff, they're going to sentence you out for the Jubilee year, which is right now 49 years. And they're not only going to charge you for each year, it's going to be inflation. So if, like, in 40 years, loaf of bread's $1,000, you've got that multiplication happening. So if you don't got the money to pay for it, guess what the alternative is? Well, cue Nazi Germany. We already have it in our modern history. It's still a wound that you can open. The scab isn't healed. They're doing it over and over again because that's what is profitable. That is what mammon is. That is Caesar. Give to Caesar what is Caesar's and take what God has given to you. He gave you only land, right? So you get that land back, and now everything changes. And that, I think we're over complicating the process, because all the words are different from what we were taught. And when I say we were taught, not what they did in inculcation, but what we've done after that. So post our school, what we went and learned about law on our own. We taught ourselves wrong, right? It felt good because we were acting from our moral compass, but you can't use something that's not morally good and apply that to get to the right place. That's why
that's what I'm trying to say. I mean, every time I use fiat currency, I'm hurting my neighbor.
But
and that's why
you got to remember, every day that you don't get that land tenure re-emitted, you're hurting not only yourself, your younger generations, everybody around you. You're incompetent. This is why I keep saying that if we're doing review each week, the Crown can simply say, look at these guys. They meet each week, twice a week, and they bullshit, no different than the law gurus. So at what point are they competent to, do what we're doing with their chests all beat up, right? We're functioning as government because, we're ordained by God. Well, true, right? And true for what they say about us. At what extent can we say that we're doing anything that's not what they're doing, but just going around in a circle pretending that there's something that's not that?
But Justin, this is what I don't understand. I don't understand how William, probably the most competent, persons we know about this, he's worried about, or I shouldn't say that, but I mean, someone's worried about maybe he will go to jail. Now, what is he doing?
He's not worried. I think he wants that to happen. That would be good for him. So, if he could have a Dean Clifford episode happen, he would be fucking happy as a little kid in a candy store.
Well, he sounds like he kind of already had one when he went to jail before. They would treat him right. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, what does he do? What could he do that's wrong to get thrown in jail? Except stand up for what he wants.
Yeah. I would say 9 months, not pay that stuff, but it's less than 9 months already now. So that's why they gave him 9 months. It was a catch-22, like going, here, you got 9 months to go and make that money and pay us. But it was also like, you got 9 months to pay us. It was a
That's
double-edged
how he
sword.
has to get clean hands. He has to pay that off to get clean hands.
No, he has to get a Queen's Bench application in before that time elapses, or else he's got to show up to the court at that day. And if they try to force him to pay it, that's forcing him to slavery. So he's caught them. They're playing like hot potato, but they're both holding a potato, in my opinion, that's hot.
Yeah.
Right. As soon as William gets into the Queen's Bench, then it's done. Right. That inadvertently was sidetracked for him. So, but I've got $2,500 in a certified check by RBC. So RBC is funding my way out of equity. All from a month worth of work that I paid like only 3 weeks of work into this pension. I completely forgot about like 10 years ago. It popped up on one of my old emails asking, I guess they sent out a letter to one of my old addresses asking about what's going on with my account with them. I'm just like, oh? I'm like, yeah, I'm not making any more money. And I know in Canada, if you don't make $37,000, it's poverty, it's undue financial hardship. So they have a legal obligation to accommodate anybody in equity under that income level. So I'm like, yeah, can I get it back? And they said, yeah, you just got to fill out these forms. You'll get the gross back. So they took $300 away from me to pay for the Canadian pension. So still subject, can't get away with that. But I got $2,500 now to fund this. So,
Justin, if I could come in again, please. Again, it's Nigel. Yeah, I'm meshing with an awful lot of what you've been saying tonight, and it's wonderful what you've been sharing. But I've got a bit confused on a few things, and obviously we've all come onto this path a different way, I guess, and we've learned from different resources. And at the end of the day, I suppose we sort of connect with the information that we feel kind of gels with us intuitively. For a time, a guy called Carl Lentz came over to the UK and sort of jiggled us around a bit.
I can explain exactly what Carl Lentz has done.
Yeah, no. Anyway, so he was going on about Queen's Bench and all the rest of it. But the point I was coming on to was, and I've actually been to Queen's Bench in London on a couple of cases supporting somebody, it's a pretty intimidating environment. Here in the UK at the Queen's Bench, the court itself is really steep. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's tiered so that it really belittles you, and the judge is way up above you. But they were perfect gentlemen, I have to say. And the case that we were trying to present was very much on the subject we've been talking about tonight. Very dear friend of mine, Lawrence. And he was basically trying to sort of extricate himself, as a better word, from the public into the private. And the judge and he put in all sorts of paperwork. And the judge said, I can see something here, but I'm not sure exactly what it is you're trying to say. And he gave him various directives to go away and reconsider the case. But of course, he didn't follow those directives. So unfortunately, he ended up serving time for contempt of court. So he started the ball rolling, and then sort of couldn't quite keep it going on the right track. But why are you focusing so much on the solution being Queen's Bench and not equity? Bearing in mind that
I'll explain.
Let me just finish. Bearing in mind everything that comes out of the cess decay and all the suggestions, if I can put it that way, coming from things like the remitter from Black's Law, suggests that you have to bring an action, in equity. And don't get me wrong, I'm not doing anything other than asking, where you place your belief in the Queen's Bench as being a solution. And I'm kind of new to what you're talking about here, so just willing to learn, Yeah,
absolutely. Really good questions. And Carl Lentz, I'll start with Carl Lentz. What he does is he profits by teaching people like the commentaries on Littleton and Blackstone's. He's read through them all. His family is very well educated in common law. But he mixes common law with the equity court, and he sells that, and he profits off that. So if you know the difference between common law and equity, he's not going to talk to you.
Yeah,
such is my case.
I didn't go for him, to be honest with you. I didn't connect with him at all well. But
so now that also ties into the explanation, is that you cannot start something into a common law court and use equity, and vice versa. So we're all still subjects to the monarchy because the land tenure exists.
Yeah.
Okay, so until you have the confirmation and release, we are subject to the monarchy. We have to follow the rule of law. If you don't, you're not being honorable. So if you put yourself into...
Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
Right. You put yourself into bad spots, you're folly type deal again, right? Okay. So now the Queen's Bench is what's actually he's been given the authority. He's got the highest seat in law regarding property. So this is why you want to go there.
Why?
Because if you go...
Yeah.
Right, because he has the inherited jurisdiction of the common law court.
He is acting as the king and queen.
Yeah, he's representing not only he's representing the usufruct, but he's also representing the use and then the monarchy.
Right.
All three of those capacities are where that guy stands. So when you give that guy that release, you're basically returning from C. So then you use 6 Anne, right, and 19 Car. I think it's 2, right? Those 2. Yep. Those are going to prove what he's now got to do, because he's being faced with somebody that's living, and they're no longer being claimed to be dead, right, and lost at sea. So then now he has to determine by the rule of law, which is common law. It's the law between the monarchy, right, that you have between the monarchy and the donor.
Mm.
And what you've just said
so that's why common law only lasts until you get that release. Once you have that release, it's done. Who cares about common law? Who cares about equity?
Yeah, sure.
It's all man's law now.
See, one of the things I've been struggling with of late is the fact that I come to this kind of realization that virtually everything out there, one way or another, is protecting the public interest, and we shouldn't be going about appearing to do any harm or damage to the public, if you follow me, because it serves the purpose very well. You shouldn't be, betraying the secrets, as it were. When we have this kind of knowledge, we have to be very careful how we conduct ourselves, because otherwise, it can turn on you very quickly. So we have to be kind of subtle in the way that we operate. I think what you were saying about going to Queen's Bench, I understand that now, because it is about the land. But one of the things that I've struggled with is getting the sorry, there's an awful echo here. It's hard to talk against it. Is if they're all living in the dead world, if you follow me, the 2-dimensional flat land, and you're coming into it as the living being, they can't hear you. You can't be seen. You're not visible to them. So at what point do you find a higher authority? Are you saying that the Queen's Bench can speak to the man? Or are you saying that you actually have to go in there as the persona, but come out as the man? I mean, just try and help me across that little bit.
Oh, no, this is an awesome question, and I'll be able to bridge this gap for you here.
Please, yeah, if you could. Because, my thinking is, just to clarify that, my thinking is that it'd be like walking into a field full of cows and saying, hey, I'm a man, I'm alive, and the cows turn around and just go moo. I mean, who are you going to find who understands what you're saying even? Because everybody else is dead. How can they recognize the living if they're all dead?
Okay, let me stop you and explain.
Yeah.
So, have you ever considered, now I truly mean this, that you're wrong on your interpretation of the dead?
Right, quite possibly. I mean, we have.
What if the
We're not
lawless,
dead, we just haven't in legion.
the lawless are dead?
Sorry?
So the lawless are the dead. So people who don't follow any form of law are what are considered dead.
Okay. Yeah, that's good.
Then you'll start to understand how this dead talk makes no sense to them, because when you go into that court, it doesn't matter what tier system is there. You see another man that's there acting as somebody, and you're sitting there acting as somebody.
Sure. Okay.
Right? So the court is literally just, it's that, right? The paperwork that you're going to exchange between them. So if you're saying, hey, you're of the dead court and you can't hear me, he's looking at you and going, you're vexatious, frivolous, get out of here. And if you keep talking, you're going to jail.
I wasn't suggesting that. I just want to make sure that he can hear me, you know.
But so this is the explanation.
Make a point on that. Can I make a point on that? I mean, who's making the first assumption in law? When you first walk in the courtroom, who's making that first assumption? That's my, that's where I stand. I don't know where, at that point, when you walk in, you've got, someone who's acting as a sheriff or a court official, and you got someone acting as a court reporter, and you got someone acting as the prosecution, and you got someone acting as the judge.
So, David, that's why
if you walk in there, if you're walking in there, then you're already assuming that that's who they are, as opposed to saying, you are first. I recognize you as a living man, and I recognize you as a living man, and I recognize you as a living woman. Well, that removes assumption right away, does it not?
Yeah, that's good.
No, because how can you tell what capacity a man or a woman is acting in?
I was just coming on.
They're always acting in their flesh.
They're
always acting in who they are.
No.
Okay.
Where they live.
No, see, you gotta look at what they've done with gender. They're removing gender for a reason, so that you don't have that argument no more. Sure. So that your flesh babble is just that. It's babble.
It's babble. Yeah, we know
what?
About the
There's one thing that will directly point to you what capacity they're in. It starts with a T. Title.
Yeah. Of course
right?
It is.
So now if you walk into any court, right, and it's not Queen's Bench, you've walked into the wrong court, for one. So you got an error, a folly. So pull your pants up. It's going to be tough for you. Now, if you walk into Queen's Bench and there's a whole bunch of people in there, and you've already got paperwork, and they're not going to wait until you're the last one there, then it's on you to make sure that you express to that justice that, hey, can we remove everybody here that's not acting in function of government, so that I don't further injure anybody in fee simple?
Yes.
Right? Because as soon as you've done that, you've covered your base. You love your neighbors, right? Because if you're in fee simple and you're not acting as a function of government, you're in a great error. And God says, don't do that. He doesn't say, hey, go tell everybody about their great error, because if you look at Romans 14, he says, don't put a stumbling block in front of anybody. He's forgiven us all. Right? So if you can't forgive in your heart, you're going to be stumbling everybody around. Hey, you do this, you do that, you do this. I know you're a freeman on the land, which is now a terrorist, and you go to jail.
Oh, yeah. But
not. So that's why you go in, right? You own the error. It's your folly, your mistake, right? You're owning up to it, and you want to make sure everybody's cleared out that isn't function of government. And if you've already got the right paperwork in, it's going to be exactly like William.
Yeah,
you and only function of government is going to be
in the name of the air. I do get that, So just out of interest, are you still regarding this as a court of record out of interest? When you say you put your paperwork in, theoretically, court of record, keeping it simple, is what's on the record. In other words, the paper submission.
But see, this is where we're all falling again. Court of record in what jurisdiction? Where's the seat of law for this word that you say court of record? What jurisdiction? Because if I'm a donor...
At the court of record, to be honest. That's why I asked the question. I'm just looking for a point of clarification on it.
Yeah, if I'm a donor and I'm in reversion out of equity, me and you need an agreement, or else I'm going to be putting a claim into your jurisdiction's court right away for trespass. And then depending on the trespass, that's what I'll go after you for.
Yeah.
Right? That's where that agreement, right? We've only come to that point in history where we only recognize agreement between two men, and we've never moved past that. All this English law, municipal law is all made up past that. There's nothing.
I do definitely concur with you on that. Yeah, no problem.
So that's how you speak the real talk, is you take that warranty that's recognized in law, it's annexed in common law, but it can be it could be a deedful as well, right? Yeah. That's why it's an indenture in common law. But if you use an inequity, it becomes a deedful, because you're basically cutting around the deed itself, and you're trimming it to how you want it to look. That's your person's, right? So as long as you take that indenture back and redeem it for what it's worth, which is the land of your choice, you're done. I'd get rid of waste and rid of prohibition, so that you don't get any more harm done to yourself. But it's really, and once everybody realizes how simple this is, we're all going to submit our own type of look onto this, which will help people coming into this past today, and it'll just snowball. And this is, I think, what William was trying to express last call. The English commentary writers, this is kind of like what they were trying to do, but they couldn't do it. They didn't have the authority to do it.
Yeah.
Right? This is why the judges today use those commentaries as the authority. Because there wasn't just enough, I don't think there was enough people like at this capacity that we're seeing today to pick up law and comprehend it, let alone comprehend the whys and the ins and outs of the law itself. Like it's not a small story to tell law. Like you can't just go, hey, this is it. And
oh no, I appreciate that. It's yeah.
And tonight's call was supposed to be about trusts and herediments, the incorporeal and the corporal and real and personal and land and all the first level of trust, second level of trust.
When we get to that, I'll be most interested. So, definitely put something in Skype to say when that will take place, if we're going to reschedule that, because that's really, really important territory to cover. Can I just pick you up? Can I just ask you a couple of other small questions here? I hope nobody else minds me asking.
I don't mind.
Again, this is just, I suppose, looking for a little bit of verification or just throwing something into the mix. One of the things I've kind of latched onto, shall we say, because again, there's an awful lot of misinformation out there, but we do have a birthright without a doubt. And I've kind of tried to narrow it down. What exactly is the birthright? Originally, I used to think, well, the birthright was your share of the Commonwealth. But now I'm thinking more it's a question of it's the labor you put into being born entitles you to food, shelter, and warmth. Without going into lots of explanations about that. But, you were born with a right. I just wondered if you could enlarge on that a little bit for me, because this is kind of new to me, the idea that, you have to claim your land. And
birthright?
That connects very well from the Sestake, the rediments and tenements and everything. But carry on. Yeah, I'd like to know your feelings on the birthright. Well, first of all, though, do you believe that we were born into perfect equity before the birth certificate, before that contract that bound us?
Good. Absolutely.
Good. We're on the same page. Great.
I have a copy of the warranty where I can go take it into a recognizable court of my peers, use a recognizable set of law that my peers agree upon, and everything should work out. We don't have anybody to prove that because they're always locked in a privy cause, and looks like we're the first group to kind of come together to do this.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm taking big notice of that. Don't worry. Yeah.
But I kind of got digressed there. How I was going to
have raised the bar without a doubt.
Your birthright. So your birthright is the land.
Yeah, getting that now.
That's it. It's that simple. 2 Corinthians 2:3. The simplicity of Christ is overlooked by the corrupted. So if you're in fee simple, you can't see the simplicity of being in reversion. You gotta fall from equity, right? So your birthright is the land, right? Just like Ezra sold his birthright to Jacob, right? And Jacob kind of marveled in that, and Jacob kind of sobbed and cried. or Ezra sobbed and cried. That's the same story expanded here. We all sell our birthright when we accept the birth certification.
Yeah.
Right? Once we do that, we ratify the agreement that was standing as a presumption, which was only there and ordained to protect the land that you would otherwise have claimed. 7 years passed, and they naturally claim you dead. That's 19 car. Right? So now you have to return from sea. Right? That see is many things to the Holy See, which is the Vatican, and its substitute whores that it's created. But yeah, the birthright is the simplest way to say it. It's your land.
Okay,
you have
brilliant.
a warranty to that birthland and birthright, and that's the registration of live birth, is what we call it here in Canada. And I'm not sure what they call it in the other jurisdictions. I think acts of live birth is something that's very close, or certificates of live birth.
Yeah.
But it's the thing that certifies that it's not the birth certification; it's the actual certificate registration of the live birth, where your parents are signing that.
Do you think it is still possible today to record a birth rather than register, which is effectively to give away?
There's no point. Why are you recording a birth? For what purpose would that serve?
I'm kind of playing a hunch. Bear with me. You know, as you are very well aware, England is very old, and I believe that back at the time of the Norman conquest, when the land was divided up, and land was given away to those who were in favor, who were regarded as in favor with the king at the time. Those lands, a lot of them today, bearing in mind this is still a very feudal country, and I believe the land is all held in a feudal sense, and I do believe that it is still held by the barons, although they keep very quiet and they're invisible for the most part. But I've done a lot of research here which suggests that each county is primarily owned by the Queen with the consent of the barons, and they know the duty to the Queen. I've done this through the property tax research. But anyway, I don't want to digress too much, but I'm thinking that...
But just let's wait. Baron is a good example of what we're talking about, because you're a few levels below that. You're not a Lord Manor. You're a villain.
Oh, yeah, I know I'm a villain. Don't get me wrong. I know all that feudal side of it. But what I was coming to is, do you think it is possible? You know, I ought to mention, they've done away with the right of heirship, haven't they? You can no longer be the true heir. So each generation starts over with a new birth certificate, because you can't inherit from your father, because he didn't create a trust.
I disagree.
He didn't inherit. So you think the right of heirship is still there?
Oh, right. Yeah, absolutely.
Because I'm thinking that in the backwater counties, there may still be private estates, not that they would be readily identifiable to us.
No, that's where your folly, that's where your error, I should say, not your folly, your error is
All
coming.
the lands that were originally given to these Lord Manors were only held in a certain capacity, weren't they?
Yeah,
they only hold a use.
So you don't think it's possible today that there are still private estates, gated, as it were?
They may have some type of exemption or something like that, but ultimately, though, that's the key.
Because we were looking at the whole idea of probate, and you know, we were considering it. This is going back to the days when we did studies around the executor and the supposed estate that we all have.
But see, Nigel, you got to look at it like this. Where's the seat in law, right? You keep referencing your law research, but I'm going, but where's the seat in law? What jurisdiction were you looking at? Were you looking at equity? Because everything you did was vain.
I was more referencing it from the acts and the comments that have been made about the various acts. I mean, you know, sort of central is always, you know, I keep looking at everything from the point of view of the sestacay and thinking of it from, you know.
Do you know what that is, though, today in modern language? What is the sestacue? Do you know what that is in today's language?
God, yeah, I should do. I'm just feeling a bit tired at the moment, but I have
Citizen.
That's right, yeah. I have done quite a lot of breaking down the actual act in terms of the intent and the purpose and the parties and the language. Runs to quite a few pages.
1535 is when it all changed. The statute of use made the presumption stand that it's the cestui use. That's that we're going to deal with. Okay, so then after that, they subsequently made laws not only in the common law, but then they did everything in your equity, which is what most people keep clinging to, is this equity.
Yeah, I got to make. I put my hand up. You know, I was kind of like thinking that's where the solution might be, but you've opened my eyes listening to you over the last couple of days. With that,
it should be able to give you a whole different perspective on William too, because that's what I'm trying to do, is look at how to tie this all together so that we're not all going from one area and going, well, this is the specialist in that area. Like, we can only ask William questions about English law because he's the only one that seems to speak English law. It shouldn't be like that for us all, right? We should be able to say something and it all kind of clicks like, right. Like, when we say land,
the Bar Temple anyway, doesn't it? Whether it's for you or for us, you know. Yeah, most interesting. Certainly got me thinking here, that's for sure. I mean, I've been on this for years, and I put so much time, effort, and energy into it, and yet you keep sort of, I don't know, it's very difficult to put it all together into one firm comprehension, as it were. You've got all these various areas of study, and they all look very credible, and you could in part justify most of it. And you know, we know it's all hidden in plain sight. The problem is where.
Well, if you look at omnipotence,
put it all together.
We structured omnipotence in its categories in the same phenomena that you're going to learn this. The first step is the first step is understanding, which is stand under.
Yeah,
right. So it's about a cognitive 180. You've got to stand under the redefinitions because what you learned was wrong. So this is the actual right word. And then once you've gone past that cognitive 180, then you can learn. And that is a simple process because there's not much to learn about this. Because once you get past that cognitive 180, the understanding part, the learning just kind of is like the next mid step to the step that you got to take next.
I feel like we got to empty our glasses and start over again.
Exactly. Empty the glass completely and then start refilling it, right? And don't fill it up with stuff that just comes along with the important stuff. Just put important stuff in the cup.
Yeah, I mean, you can understand how we all fall for this folly because we do actively go looking for answers. And there's just an awful lot of misleading information out there, you know, without a doubt. I mean, presumably you're aware of from Black's 3, Com19, the remitter. I mean, and it's only one paragraph. I'm happily read it out to you. But that's been pretty central for me in terms of looking for answers. But it could now well be that that's totally misleading.
Right, and that's actually where a lot of the law gurus are taking the common law and applying it. That's where you get your AV4 scams that came in, which they had to stomp out because at the beginning, you could utilize that. They didn't know how to stop it. That's why. They get this paperwork and they just have to pay it off because it's like, well, how do we say no? We don't have a legislated no. Right, but now today they do, so they can say no to you, and it'll get you in trouble. So that's why that's just taking anything and getting. You've got to be functioning as government to do that. So if you've done that, it's going to come back. You're going to have to pay for that. They're going to ask for that back. It's with all things, right? If you take tax money from a government and it's unlawful, they're going to ask for it back eventually. Might not be today or tomorrow, but you know it'll come. I think that's going to be.
Is an executor functioning as government?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. They're functioning. They're functioning. Executor and administrator is your function of government.
But you're just settling the account.
But what's the account, though?
Then
What's the first level of the trust?
Citizen.
But there is no true account between you and the citizen, though, right? Because the monarchy created C, and C created D, which you volunteered to be under your folly. So there is no account between you and C. That's why you have to give up all your assets, or else you'd be able to keep everything and go, hey, I just figured out that I may see you, C. And then it'd be done.
Well, then,
right? That can't happen, because if that could happen, then you could have disinheritance happen, which means I could just go take all your guys' land and be nothing you could do about it. Right? At least this system is made out so that only the competent can get out, and even once they're out, they were always protected with the privy clause. So if they went and babbled their mouth, they would no longer have their land.
Correct. Yeah.
Right? Just like if you're going to take your land and start killing people, well, trust me, it's not going to be a long time until the state military is on your doorstep taking you out.
Yeah. I mean, I've always believed you've got to, you've got to do this in clean hands and in an honourable fashion, because the gatekeepers and the watchmen on the wall will make sure that only the worthy get through, because they can't have people running amok, can they? If they're going to take the chains and collars off, they got to know that you can be trusted. Yeah.
be a good dog.
And that's why you've got to use the law that's recognized where the warranty is annexed to, right? The warranty is annexed to the common law, which is your 6N, right? Your 19 car, your monarchy laws.
Well, I'm stuck in the idea of being the executor because I have a paper that said I was. It's sealed, even though it's an informal probate deal. So now I got to figure out how to get rid of that.
Because, at first they were letting you guys. You're in the U.S., right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're letting you guys. They're they're really trapping you Americans. It's sad.
Yeah.
But if you're the executor, that means you're the function of government. So you can basically utilize 6N and write out the paperwork and get that done. Right? You don't have to rely on an application to the Queen's Bench to do it. You just need to send it to the proper people now. So that would be dependent strictly on your land where you've chosen.
You mean just send it to the seal holder?
Right. That's why we were saying you're in a good advantage. Like, we got to go to the Queen's Bench and get the monarchy to do that, but you've taken that position.
Yeah, you've got that title.
Yeah. That's what the executor is. Yeah. Wow.
Because if you go to Queen's Bench and try to get them to do it, that might actually conflict with that, because you stepped up to be the executor and they allowed that to happen. Right? So now you're going to be going to another administrator, another executor, and getting them to do something that you should be the one doing that. So they might actually, any paperwork that you send might get you in the butt. You got to make sure everything you do, you can justify.
You'll be regarded as being of two minds, possibly.
Two jurisdictions, yeah.
Two minds. You're two-minded.
Yeah, double-minded. That's what they call it.
Double-minded, yeah.
What if you're...
But that's why I always tell people, like, you got to know your end game before you even start studying this. You kind of got to know where you're going to be picking your lands. I tell that right off the bat. Know where you're going to be putting your feet at the end of the day. Because if you're just like, well, I'm going to learn law and then pick, for why? Like, why? Like, what's motivating you?
Just out of interest, talking the end game, because this is something that I've given a lot of consideration to. I'm trying to imagine what life would be like if you actually were operating in the private totally. And I'm minded of the film John Wick 1 and John Wick 2, because I think that was a strong indicator. There were some good clues there. But, you would still have to have a conduit back into the public. You'd still need to be able to go and buy your milk and your fuel and, newspapers or whatever you want to do. You still need to be able to move about. So you presumably need something that's the equivalent of a driving license and a port pass, And I'm thinking, well, how's this all going to kind of interface? Because if you're totally in the private, all you can do is write to another country's embassy and ask them if they'll, permit you to enter. But then if you did that, you're stuck with the same problem that poor old, what's her name in Canada, Mary Croft had. That if she left Canada, she couldn't get back in.
But that's only because she was trying to use the ports.
Yeah.
It's no different than Carl Lentz. Carl Lentz is banned from Canada in the United States. But equity, he's not banned from common law.
We do need to figure all this out. How will life continue and function? How will we interact with the public? If we make this bold move.
Well, you don't need licenses because that's licentious. That's a license or a permit to commit something that's unlawful, making it legal, right? So you don't need that. That's kind of unsound. Your confirmation release from the Queen's Bench of Canada or whatever state you're from is what it's like your license to kill or license to move, I guess you'd want to call it. I like calling it license to kill. It sounds cooler. But yeah, it's like you want to go buy milk. You're going to have, like in Canada, the youth has an interest attached to it, which is in the millions. So you get that back and the waste that's done to your land that you chose. So you're going to have like money and a lot of it.
Yeah,
so
of course.
Buying things will be just that, right? You want those small things, you would just outright buy it with cash. Cell phones, you would just, to me, I'm probably just going to buy like a 10-year or worth a 10-year value contract with the company. And this is what I pay for you. I don't want you to bother me until 10 years.
Do that, actually, they can only charge you after the event with phones. You can't buy it up front, believe it or not.
But that's equity though.
Yeah.
If you're out of equity,
but then you're going to talk to the phone company. Who in the phone company is going to understand what you're talking about? The problem is they've got everybody so dumbed down. Who can you actually have a conversation with who actually understands what's going on?
Well, at the very basic, you can buy a disposable phone.
We have the same problem all the time, challenging things, It's like they all play dumb. Anyway, I've got two further questions for you then, if that's okay. Am I right in thinking that if you accept their invitation to court, then putting it rather simplistic, himself, okay, the trustee's here, we can continue with our business. Would you go along with that presumption that you will always be the trustee? And if you turn up, because theoretically it should be the trustee, although I've tried this trick and I didn't get very far, but that was down to lack of experience. But you've got to get in the trenches and try a few things, But yeah, theoretically, if you're in court, you should be talking to the plaintiff on the other side. You shouldn't really have eye contact with the judge. He should be a neutral referee. But because we don't know what we're doing, if we go in as the legal entity, we get played in their game to be the trustee, and the judge then adjudges, and the plaintiff does very little, if nothing at all. And we've got to get our act together so we know exactly how we're going to.
That's what we're releasing from, though, aren't we? We're releasing from all of the things, all of the actions and all of that, but also anything that you're holding in trust. You're no longer holding anything in trust for anyone else, are you?
No.
That's what you're releasing from.
I guess what I'm saying is, I'm very aware that they've got a very good drill for getting you trapped in the sandbox, if you get my meaning. If you don't
don't think of it that way. You're looking at it from the wrong polarity.
No, look, I can answer that
neutralize
myself. And based on what Nigel's just said before about his experience at Queen's Court, they were very gentlemanly, they were receptive and saying, "Oh, what have you got here? I'm interested." But unfortunately, you didn't have they didn't have the correct, process in its entirety, in the correct manner and matter, and fully complete for him to be able to do anything that you're asking of him. So I reckon, based on what you said, when they do see this and written and presented as it should be properly, it's gonna be a good day for them, I think, and they're gonna go along with it quite happily.
Yeah, I think it's a bit like taking your homework up to teacher, and teacher saying, "Well, I'm sorry, but you haven't quite done well enough here. Go back, try again."
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And depending on how you are is probably how brutal they'll be, I suppose. I don't know.
But they're very good at reading body language, aren't they? They're very good at irrespective of what you may say, they will look at the one who has stood before them, and they will read that person by their body language and they come from and everything else. So it's not just a question of paperwork or what you say. You have to have
judging our character, aren't they?
Yeah.
Are we really?
Do I see?
You got to look at it this way, though. When you go into their court, you are going to always be subject. So it's not a matter of going in there and you're going to now be subjected to them. You don't have a release.
No,
you don't have the confirmation or release. So until that point happens, you're always subject to your jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Right. And as soon as that happens, then it changes. Right. Then even if you go into a court, you're not submitting to their jurisdiction. Right. Because there'll be, at that point, you're kind of going with a vain hypothetical theory of how you're going to try to make something up to suit what you think you know. Right. Because if they're pulling somebody that is in reversion into the court, there's only the probability that that guy's done something wrong to them. Because if it's not the case, the donor is going to squish that like right away. The donee won't even let it go through.
No. Yeah.
Right. And that's something that we don't think about on that perspective because we are still on this side of equity. Right. So you always are going to be going in there. You're never going to go in there in common law because you're not a common law subject.
This is what I had a question on there for Justin. After we say, even if we do present our claim in Queen's Court, obviously, as you say, we're assumed subject, and we are because we've not got the seal for our release. But how do we, after we obviously clear the court and with clean hands say, look, let's get rid of fee simple, we don't need them in here listening to that, how do you just literally just explain them what you want from them and say, look, I've got my 6N affidavit, I've got all my releases, my proof, my notice of interest in land, and then just explain the situation, and then that in itself is going to be able to move the court, if you will, or the judge will then do something and honour the fact that, yeah, all right, let's hear this out in common law. Like, what is it that actually moves that? What motion is it? Or
well, your motions are what moves the court, right? That's why I say you want to do everything in summary fashion and use your notices to omit because that will speed the process.
Then? Do you know, or is that going to be specific on the Queen's Bench for your jurisdiction?
My first motion is going to be based on them not giving up my land or anything. So my first motion will be going after summary judgment.
So it's the entire claim then, basically?
Yeah, unless the Crown plays dirty. That's the only way. That's the only reason that we have a high price for this claim right now is because we don't know how dirty the Crown's going to play.
If you go in, you can't just go in there first and foremost and claim the lands because you've got no privity to that. So you've got to have your releases first, haven't you? So what's that motion that would move from you refusing to be the court person?
Well, you have to prove everything you do, right? And it has to be justified in law, right? So this is why you do the notices for your land so that you can establish you're being divorced. Because as soon as you can establish you're being divorced, how do you prove that? You prove it with your notices and respond.
So when you turn up then, do you just submit those notices or explain that you've got these notices and that in itself, that motion itself is going to move the court into the correct jurisdiction or what?
Well, by law, he's estoppeled from disputing anything about your affidavit. So if he's talking and disputing anything, you've done something wrong. If you've done something right, this will go through just like it's
okay.
Like so you say they treat you very kind.
So although I'm entering as a subject, there is no specific time where they will announce if you will, that the court's moved and they can hear it. What you're saying is, as long as you just present everything correctly as you would from the beginning, explaining it and have the proof to back it all up, it will just get assumed and moved and heard, if you will, as a common law injury.
Right, because the most that's going to happen is he's going to take recesses to read your footnotes, your areas in law that you footnoted. Right, so he's going to go and check that stuff out, right, and then come back and then go, come on, continue, right? But if you've got everything right, there won't be that stall. The stall only happens because you've done a wrong step. You didn't do something right. That's why they'll get you to proceed and,
or if the judge
keep
is
stumbling
with something and does actually want to read the statute.
Then he'll recess. He'll take a recess and he'll go read it. He's not afraid to do that, and you wouldn't want him to not do that.
Exactly.
Right? You don't want to we don't want to destroy the relationship or the interaction of men, and this is why it's so important to
which is why
hit
I
that.
What Nigel said about how receptive the judges were.
Yeah.
Right, because they're not hiding. Nobody's hiding. This isn't a sinister system. They just can't tell you because it
my
compromises.
Experiences of all the lower courts. Once we were in Queen's Bench, it was a totally different experience, and they are just in the red, not in the black. So I believe
because you're also in a different jurisdiction when you enter a higher court, right? The lower courts, they're nothing. But when you get into that Queen's Bench, he's got the inherited jurisdiction to switch that court, right? So it could become no longer an equitable court upon a release. Right, so this is why I'm saying, like, you can release yourself before you go in there, but you're not released until you have the confirmation.
Sure.
Your deed release is just one step, right? It's a dance. They gotta step with you. Yeah. You got to stand in the water, but they hold your back while you go under.
Yeah. Wow.
Right. Whereas we think they're the ones that aren't letting us have water. No. They're standing there holding your back while you dip yourself. Function of government's always been a great thing. God ordained this from day one. This is the old world order, right? The new world order is the corporate ID system, where you're just part of a municipality.
So, would you go along with the idea that we're obviously all debtors, construed as debtors at the moment, but that if you move into the private, you then switch and become a creditor? And if you do, there's great responsibility comes to being a creditor, as you just alluded to. Not that this is my motive by any means. I mean, this part for me has been more about just sheer curiosity, I suppose, trying to fathom it all. But let's say you do make it through, then you would then stand as a creditor, would you not? And as I say, huge responsibility comes with that. And I believe part of it is you're supposed to become then a benefactor and actually use some of that for the good, for good purpose, maybe set up a foundation or something. Have you thought, or do you know how it may pay out from that point of view?
Oh, yeah. What you do after with your money, with your resources, is strictly what you want to do. You could go spend it in the casino and drink yourself away.
Well, yeah, but they could cut you off at any time if you were seen to do anything that could be regarded as, inappropriate or damaging.
No, because you got to remember there has to be an agreement that establishes what is inappropriate. You're free to go as long as you don't kill somebody or harm other property. But if you want to go spend your inheritance, you can do that.
Yeah, but you'd have to. Yeah, but what would happen, for instance, if you use that money and then gifted a load of it away to relieve people of their debts? And bearing in mind the whole debt-based economy is about control. Now suddenly you're disbalancing that control, aren't you? You're misaligning it all. So I'm just sort of thinking that as I said, there's great responsibility comes with this. You go undermining their public.
You got to remember though, if you have a lot of money and you were to gift it to somebody, what does Hollywood always show us? That usually those people are endangered afterwards, or the money's taken away, right? It's always a bad thing. So now just apply that to real life. If you're to give somebody a whole bunch of equitable value, are you really helping them?
No.
You're like, hey, slave, stay in slavery. Goodbye.
Yeah. I mean, if they want to change it, they need to be on this call, don't they?
Exactly. And if you want to help them,
you're
teaching them. You wouldn't just feed them the fish, right? Because tomorrow they're not going to have fish, and if you're not there, they're going to starve.
Precisely.
Right?
Yeah.
And this is
give
like,
a man a fish, you'll feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, he'll feed himself for a lifetime. Yeah.
right. And in the same way with our interactions with the public, right? You can go about gifting somebody, go out and buy the whole restaurant while you're there and visit, but in the end, it's going to eventually catch up onto you because you're going to start making a name for yourself in the public.
But
and that's going to bring attention to your privy, and that privy will be compromised at that point. Well, unless there's a group of us. At that point, if there's a group of us, we can change the world, and we don't have to fear that.
Yeah. Yeah, safety in numbers, certainly on that side of it. Yeah, it was just an impression I had that their system actually needs a certain amount of people to go through, which is why notices for those that can see them, prompting them, if they can see, the suggestion, to follow the path, because they do need to keep the system in balance, apparently. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but whilst the majority of people are in the system as debtors, they still need a small percentage of creditors. I don't know if you'd agree with that at all, just sort of throwing it in the mix. You still there?
Equity.
Yeah. Yeah, equity would be there.
Yeah, just curious about
that. You got to remember that equity isn't bad. We think it's bad because we're past the age of majority, and a lot of us now are past the age of capacity. In other words, we already have firsthand knowledge of this law. We should be acting, not sitting on Skype and talking about it to other people.
Very true.
And that's the catch-22.
Well, only when we're confident enough to move forward with it, of course,
Absolutely, but don't ever forget, this is your folly. This is your air. No man will ever be able to take that away from you.
Well,
so even if you make mistakes right up to that front door of the Queen's Bench, remember, it's your folly. That's what being a man is about, or a woman, right? Mature, opposite of child.
If you think how much law has ever been written, it would take hundreds of lifetimes to actually read it all, let alone comprehend it all. So that at best, we can only be an idiota in their system. In other words, a man who is ignorant of the law. And apparently that is a legal term that you can actually say to the judge, I am, sir, but an idiota.
No, you don't ever want to claim that you're an idiot. That's
no,
Carl
not
Lentz.
An idiot. There's a big difference between an idiot and an idiota, because you cannot be expected to understand their law. It's too convoluted and too complex. I mean, just showing it.
But you got to be aware that you're now taking Latin proverbs, mixing it into Old English law, filtering it through modern day English law, and then trying to give your interpretation that it's in the preposition of correctness.
Yeah, that's a bit cheeky, isn't it? Thinking about
it's babble. It's babble, and somebody sold it on to you because you probably watched it on a YouTube video, which earned somebody mammon.
Right? Don't watch too much YouTube, but yeah.
Right, or another source of material, because this really, the truth of English law is only in the law library or on Omnipotence. There's really only those sources.
Be a sloth, but at the same time, we do need to. I mean, it is still for most people a pretty complicated subject, and obviously it does take a lot of work and effort to sort of comprehend it and to proceed forward with it. So, you can't go before you're ready, to be truthful.
I think, to be honest, what no one man could learn what happened after the creation and what was writ after, the fundamental laws, if you will, the beginning of English law. That you could learn, any one man could learn, and we are learning. Like it's all that other stuff what they've created after that you're trying to understand as well, and that's what you'd never understand until your dying day, because there's so much of it.
Very good. Yeah, thank you for that.
Look what Scripture says. It tells us it's vain to learn unrighteousness. So if you look at this now as what's righteous, well, the only thing that's righteous is what we agree upon. So the agreement, the land tenure. The land tenure is the only thing righteous. Everything outside of that is unrighteous and vain to learn.
Yeah.
Because if you're learning about a comfortable position in a title, granted only by the authority of the land tenure, then to me, I'm just like, hey, let's just talk about the land tenure and getting rid of that, and we can discuss something way far cooler.
Ooh.
Right? Like, how many cows do you need? Right? What's your chicken count that you're looking at? What grains are you using? Vegetation here, there, waterways. Real stuff that we're supposed to be worrying about, not, hey, what game is it on TV today? Right?
Yeah.
Not suggesting that that's what you do, but this is what society's brainwashed into thinking, right? About entertainment.
Exactly. Yeah. Definitely have to speak with you on that one.
So
the best thing we could do is turn the TV off and put our time into studying this, to be fair.
Right. And once you learn this and you know what land you want, you have your end game, the process is really quick and it's really simple. It's not going to take much.
Earlier in the conversation, you were talking about having, I forget now what was it an acre or something, and then you were going to expand it to a larger amount?
Yeah, I'm only doing 2 kilometers squared right now, and that's just because it's been land I frequently go and hike on. I've always been kind of called towards there. But I'm probably going to end up right next to William over in BC.
But if you had that land, would it be to the exclusion of all others?
Yeah, absolutely. Until I leave it. And if I move my domicile, say, over to BC with William, then this land has to go back to the Crown.
Yeah, sure.
I can't, unless I have a member that's out of no, I could probably even no, I'd rather him stay out of fee simple. You could probably get away with them being in fee simple with your agreement that you had with them. But if you could keep somebody out of fee simple, watching your land would be the better scenario.
You're saying you have to give up where you occupy presently and move to a new pasture, as it were. You can't claim.
Do you have 2 bodies?
Yeah. Well, me and the wife, yeah.
No, you.
Clever.
You're not hooked right now.
Yeah.
You and your wife can't swap.
No.
You're stuck in that body, just like you're stuck in the land that you're at. Where you're at is where you're at. That's why it's important to have that.
And you can't claim from yourself. You can't injure yourself.
No. Right. Got it. Yeah.
So if you own it, who are you claiming it from?
Yeah.
And also why if you're going to have land in one area but go and try to do another area, you've got to give up that land of the past, right? Or you have a member of your, whatever you want to call it, your family, somebody in fee simple under your own agreement watching that land. But even then, you're running into problems because, like, at what point can I, as a donor, stand up benevolently and say, "Hey, you're being greedy, you're usurping"?
Yeah, but let's back it up just a little bit. And again, forgive me for any apparent ignorance here. My belief is that the Crown claims all the land. That all we ever have is a title deed. We have a title interest, but we never have
a title at that.
Sorry?
In equity, the presumed owner is the monarchy. But in common law, that is not the case. The donor is.
Right.
That's why you have the first level of trust.
I can't claim for where I currently domicile.
No, you cannot be the one. You can't be divorcing yourself.
Yeah.
You can't punch yourself in the face and then go and get remedy from your peers.
Yeah. Okay, so we got to start over afresh somewhere else.
Right, or in the best case scenario, what I've been playing with, it's not for my scenario because we're not going to keep this city town apartment here. But if you had property that you truly wanted, you would do it as a couple type thing. So you'd go into reversion with no equitable possessions. Your wife would be all in possession of it, right? And then you switch around so that once you're in reversion, you go get and reclaim everything back through your private contracts you agreed upon with her.
Yeah. So although it gave you a bit of a laugh earlier, it was kind of on the money.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
But
Yeah,
that also takes some coordination though, because to do some sneaky stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't know at what point they declare your hands dirty, right? So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it would be a risky maneuver without a doubt. Mm.
as long as you're not attached in any type of, or I should say latch, as long as you haven't latched yourself in equity to any of the stuff that you want to take into reversion, then you're good to go to take it in reversion afterward. Even if you sell it to like your buddy, go, hey, I got this like vintage car, I'll sell it to you for $5,000, but I'm going to come back afterwards. Get that agreed, that agreement that stipulates that, right? That's what you want to hold in private. So afterwards you can come back and just give him $5,000 back, or however it is that you work out with the guy, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I've done a few dodges like that in the past.
Because you got to remember that in fee simple, they only have a capacity of use, so they can always be using your stuff as you get rid of it, right?
You'd probably sell him an option. Come back, he still buys it. You have the option to claim it.
Yep.
So
I kind of thought I punched myself in the face because I probably did, but because I went into this weird way of doing it, is I claimed and declared my person dead and did an informal probate on that person, and then got appointed the executor over it. And the lady who did it with me, she was the head of the registrar office, so she knows what I was doing and everything. She even told me, she says, I know what you're doing. And I said, okay, well, good, because I don't want this person. But then she wanted me to be the guardian, and I kept saying, no, I want to be the executor, because it was like 4 or 5 years ago when that was really strong and everything.
Yeah.
And so she pointed me a letter and pointed me a guardian, and I asked for a seal and all that kind of stuff. But the reason I'm saying I punched myself in the face is I basically divorced myself.
No, what happened is you unofficially did 6 and you killed yourself, right? So now we have a natural death occurring here in law. So 25 years after that natural death, guess who's going to escheat everything?
Government.
Right. So that's your position. You were a middleman of nothing, right? Which works for people who sell that kind of crap about people into doing that stuff, and you can make your position comfortable doing that. But in the end,
they never would declare me dead because I didn't have a death
detriment.
So they said it wouldn't work because I didn't have a death certificate. So it's kind of weird. Like as soon as I came with that death certificate, then that would be okay. But since I don't have a death certificate, then nothing can happen. It's basically
you'd be amazed at how fast they can certify things, though. You cannot have a driver's license and not have a confirmation or a release from your state and be caught driving, get in an accident, kill somebody, and guess what? You have a valid driver's license in possession. But yet you've been in custody this whole entire time.
Yeah.
Right? It's not your law. They can change up and down any moment you want. This is why you got to love the law, BD, get into the court of the Queen's Bench, give him the release, because by law, he now has to release you. If not, what is that? That's slavery. And now you have forced slavery on the record, which is their public record, which isn't just an equity.
Good.
So you can only make a splash in equity. You can't make a splash in any other jurisdiction.
How did you acquire all this knowledge? This is really profound stuff. I mean, truly.
I just read. I read the law, and I have 6 kids that I don't want them subjected to the same world I grew into.
Well,
so.
kind of same motive here, to be honest with you. That's really what's behind all this. Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
smart too.
Once the light bulbs go off, you'll realize just how beautiful it is, how simple it is,
Yeah.
and and like I should have been there yesterday type deal.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't choose the words better myself. I'm just kicking myself for the time I've wasted searching for the right path to be on.
Where are you from, Nigel?
Yesterday I just did it wrong.
I mean, there must be
Well,
others
you know
here
what?
who feel the same way. I mean, the amount of effort and energy we put into so many. I mean, it was Ezad was saying about doing the executor. I mean, we had the same thing years ago with the what was it called, secure party creditor, and all that UCC filing nonsense, and that was proved to be complete nonsense.
It all
there are
will
so
be.
many
Until you're getting the lands and changing your capacity, anything you do is going to be nonsense.
Yeah, I get it now, but I'm just saying how we kept they keep us spinning in the wheel, don't they?
Yeah, it's very clever.
I don't know. I just never looked at anything as a waste of time. Everything that I've done has brought me to this moment, and I always give myself thanks and gratitude for that, because I have the energy now to see things as they truly are, because until such time I don't know what they are. So
it's true,
and I'm so thankful that I've had the opportunity.
It brought us to this point, didn't it? That's very true. Yeah, we can. Yeah. It all helps.
You sort of got to make the steps. You got to make the steps, and each one of those. Is your walk through the valley of shadows, if you will, and that light is, of course, is getting ever brighter at the end of the tunnel, and I can see it. But it's our tenacity and our will to create a better life for ourselves and create honor among other humans, and deal with ourselves and our inner Christ, our inner God.
100%. Have you thought about where you're going to vest lands, David?
We always think that, we learned all these different things because we found out something else was wrong. So we moved on to something else. That's what we do. And then as soon as you get to the point where nothing else seems to be wrong, then you must be there, because you can't find anything wrong with it. Plus, it corresponds with the law. So
you'll be there exactly when you're supposed to be there, and no sooner. It's you'll know it when it happens. I mean, we can talk all we want, but we'll never know until we're actually there. And it's like I probably just sort of narrowed down the idea. Of natural law, being that natural law is in the here and now. It doesn't exist in the future or the past. It doesn't exist in time and space. So when we get into that now, in the here and now, that's exactly where we should be, and that's where we'll move forward from, our actions of who we are.
I'll give you a little secret is when I was hardening my heart towards words, I came across the word known, and it's transliterated into English. It's known. And there's know, own, and now.
Yeah.
And that's so important, because when you have people talking about their belief, you can stop it right dead in its tracks by asking, just, point to the direction. And that's the game that they play in inequity, because when you write down a writ, you've used the mark of the beast to create a physical item, which you can then point to the direction of now, right? That's why the crown will accuse you that it's on or about this day, because they need you to say, oh yeah, it was that day. Because as soon as you do that, you mark the physical, and then now they have a reference point to point back to. Whereas if you don't do that, there is no reference point, because there is no yesterday, and there surely is no tomorrow. There is only now, today. And that's the scam they're playing. That's the scam we fall for. Right? You look at Hebrew, the word for guilt is asham, like a sham, like a scam. So God already took care of all the words prior when he started thinking about things. The very word for word is dabar. But the meaning of dabar is words and things. No separation. Yet we separate. Right? Apple and the word apple are two things to us. Not the same thing. Whereas into the Torah, there is no difference. Right? They speak forward and backwards, a living language. It's not even spoken, it's chanted. We added vowel points. We called them Nikids because we thought the language was naked. Right? They've been doing this for at least 5,000 years from what I can pull from my research. And when you go into court, when you guys are asking, like, do you have to explain this? Yeah, you do. That's what being justifiable is that you can walk them through 1066 to today.
Yeah.
If you can't, you're not competent to get out of the land tenure. That's why we have the land tenures, to prevent this type of stuff.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to get out, right, and you're going to have close to almost $100 million, and you got no, I don't even know what the word would be.
No restriction.
Yeah, no restriction. I got a new TV that I want to go buy, and I don't know what else people want to go buy.
You'd also be on the not detained list, wouldn't you?
Until they realize that you are very much capable of being detained because you're not what you claim to be.
Yeah, so I mean, you'd have to act accordingly.
Like if you get your multi-millions, you go and spend it on strippers and stuff, and afterwards these strippers are going missing.
Yeah.
Well, your donor capacity is going to disappear faster than you can even get to that next stripper.
Well, it's something I alluded to earlier. You've got to conduct yourself properly. But
right. This is where the grace and the honor comes into play. The grace and the honor part isn't given to us by God. That's what we give to God. Just like the Thanksgiving, we can't sacrifice anything no more. He says you can only give thanksgiving, gratitude. So he doesn't want prayers. He doesn't want alms. He wants you to say thank you. And that's overwhelmingly retold over and over again in the New Testament. Right? You were exempt from sin. What else can you offer but thanks?
Really?
Right?
Exactly.
This is where we fall because we're not thankful, right? We think we're entitled to everything. And that's where, if you're truly grateful, you go in and get that land, you ain't going to be spending any of that money in vain. You're going to have it figured out. You're going to be like, this is where I am in 20 years. Right. You're going to be working. That's what the scripture talks about when he says work.
Yeah.
Because you can't subdue the land by working for the man.
We're working for our children to enjoy it.
Yeah.
That's right. So they can survive and do the same thing that you do. And that's where you can still have heirs, but where's the seat in law? Because if you're an heir in equity, that means you're going to take fee simple by descent, and you might as well just do it by purchase as well.
Yep. Looks like the kids are getting a little restless.
Yeah, it's nearing their bedtime. Angela's done an awesome job.
Well, if nobody else has any more questions, I think we keep it at a certain amount of time. We're already way over it, but
Yeah, I got work in the morning. Hey, it's been brilliant, Justin, and everybody else. I really appreciate it
so
tonight.
much. Justin. It was
Lovely to straighten out some of the some of the wrong thinking here. For that, I'm very grateful.
Yeah, you guys are welcome.
It's very enlightening.
This Monday, I think it's this Monday for the next call. We're going to be starting up on the mute trial case, which you guys can all join at Omnipotence there. It's in the group section. So
have you managed to get the audio working? Can we do group calls on that yet, or is it still a bit